So, okay, let's get started. Welcome back. I hope you had a good time in the pitch sessions and that you saw some interesting companies in the exhibition also. Now we're going to have a panel, and after that there will be a dinner and award ceremony. I will come back to that a little bit later. So the question now is, what's hot and what's not hot? And we have a panel here, and I would like to introduce Pär-Jörgen, who is the CEO of GP Bullhound. So he will lead this panel and answer this question. So welcome, Per.
Thank you. Well, hello everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. This has been a fantastic event for so many years, and it's a pleasure to moderate this particular panel. I mean, let me check first. How many in here are entrepreneurs running some form of business? Hold up a hand. Okay. Right there, we have well over €1 billion of capital to go after. So if somebody just wants to storm the scene now, I think that's okay, actually. Well, before we go into the panel, and I will make introductions in a second, I think we should be incredibly proud of where we stand right now. I mean, on every metric, the Nordic region and Sweden in particular is outperforming Europe and US. I mean, to such a degree that people fly in here to spend their capital on us. And I'm very pleased to see that. I mean, I think there are some fundamental reasons for that we're going to dig into in this panel, but it really is a unique period in time and really a best place and best time to start and build a fantastic company. And the fact that we sit right underneath Spotify is also doubly inspiring, I think. And so, going to this illustrious panel now, first next to me here is Harry Briggs, who is kind of the new generation super VC. It's been with Balderton for a long time, and we're going to dig into that in a second. And then we have Sitar, who is bravest of brave human beings, also a woman, have actually raised a new seed venture fund in this climate. And, you know, let's not talk about Greek today. And then we have Pawel, who's left Team Europe, which in its own right is a super success, to now start kind of a very angel-friendly VC fund. I mean, the idea of not just giving you capital, but also giving you proper help. I think that's fantastic. And then Holmes from the fabulous Index Group, who have made more successful investments in Europe than anybody ever before or after. And finally, and maybe by far most famous in Sweden, Pär-Jörgen Pärson, who is allegedly a great guitar player, but also have managed to snatch a couple of big wins in the region. So I think a big applaud for this panel and their wallets. So the question here is, before we go into what's hot, I want to ask you, what has been the best ever? What's the best investment you've ever made, Harry?
Oh,
or been part of making?
That is always, it's like choosing your children, isn't it? But I mean, since we are in Sweden, obviously an investment that I'm very excited about is Ticktail, who I was introduced to, I guess, 18 months ago. Carl Balderkrans, I don't know if he's here. No. I've made a few investments in e-commerce, and what excited me about him was that he was saying, not only can we make e-commerce simple and much, much cheaper for you to sell stuff online, but we'll actually go the extra mile and help you market your shop and help you get customers in. And I hadn't seen anyone really tackling this problem in the same way he was. And I also thought he had this great combination of design and tech and, you know, the right experience. He was the sort of the right guy in the right place at the right time to do this. And so we made that investment very early for us, you know, pre-product. But you know, 10 months after launch, I think they announced they had 10,000 stores, and a lot of those stores, you know, making decent money. So it's looking very promising.
It's a fantastic story, that. And also, maybe to spin on that is, I mean, Carl is quite an astounding individual in its own right. And Ben, I mean, how important is it when you make these investments? How much is it the person versus the business strategy, in your opinion?
Well, I think one of the earlier presenters said people are the kind of highest order or the most leverageable component of any business. And I think we'd certainly subscribe to that view. It's a war for talent, and we're always trying to find great entrepreneurs, and it's a second factor that they're hopefully going after big markets. So it's really those two things: great entrepreneurs, and that's passion, talent, connections, energy. Hopefully not too crazy. Well, on that right boundary of kind of crazy enough to be entrepreneurs, but not so crazy enough that you worry about what's going to happen if things go wrong. So yeah, that's where we try and mine and spend a lot of time.
And I mean, on that, maybe over to Pär-Jörgen, of the CEOs and founders you have worked with, who would you kind of cast as a leading example, a role model for others to follow, and maybe 2-3 points on why?
I think obviously Daniel Ek, who I've had the pleasure of working with now for quite some time. First as a CTO of Tradera when he was in high school, and then as CEO of Spotify. I think it was not evident in his head that he would be a great CEO, but he had the willingness and the eagerness and the relentlessness to actually become a great CEO. He wanted to learn all the time, and he wanted to reach out to people who really were experienced on the board, outside of the board, and everywhere. And he was smart enough, and is smart enough, and also has the tentacles and the emotional qualities to really understand what's going on in his company. So I think he's by far the most inspiring, even for me, and I'm actually 20 years older than he is.
And think yourself pretty inspiring.
No.
So, okay, let's check the room. How many of you think you are a great or potential great CEO? Hold up a hand. Good. Okay, so that we cut down the pipeline of investable opportunities to have for you. It's a good start. Let's go on. I mean, Pawel, you have been working in Team Europe, which of course has quite an interesting model around this. It's not just investing capital, sitting on boards, giving good advice, but actually bringing it all in-house. How do you manage talent in that environment? Is that a good place to manage talent?
I mean, can you hear me? Is that on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just gotta speak.
So as you mentioned, I left Team Europe 2 years ago, so hard for me to speak like what it looks like right now. But I think what is special about guys like Team Europe and a few other guys who follow that model of incubation is that you can accumulate this talent in those specific areas that are prerequisite for success in certain areas of internet entrepreneurship. And thus having that in-house, you can move much faster than someone who needs to build like all the elements from scratch. So I think this is why they try to have this all in-house and put kind of a lot of attention to making sure that they have the best people. And what attracts people to this model, I think, is that they can work on a number of different projects at the same time, or like and are not kind of stuck with one project for a long time. And some people appreciate that, especially kind of experts in very deep areas. They sometimes like to work on a couple of things rather than on one thing.
So possibly that's something as a more kind of normal VC that you could also do within the portfolio, move people around? Or does it fall down there?
I think it's different in the VC. I think in VC you have a portfolio of companies, but every company is kind of a company and it has people that are focused only on that company. You can maybe facilitate some exchange. But what a kind of incubator like Team Europe is doing, they have people who really spend 30% here, 40% there all the time and kind of facilitate the exchange of knowledge at the deepest level.
And Sitar, I mean, when we talk about angel investing or early stage VC, seed investing, I know a lot of entrepreneurs that I meet, want more than the capital. They also actually want somebody who can guide them to maybe become the type of leader that Pär-Jörgen think Daniel has become, but maybe wasn't from start. How do you manage that? I mean, how do you help them with that? What is there you can do, and what is there this audience could go do themselves maybe to become these inspired leaders?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've learned over the past year, almost year and a half now, is and we knew this from before because I've always worked with early companies, is that you start off as a founder and you become a manager, you become a CEO, right? Very few people are born CEOs. It's a learned set of skills. So one of the things we do is we look for founders that have the ambition and the desire to become managers and to become CEOs. Because if you don't have that, it's very unlikely that you will become one. And then we just work with them to help them in areas where they're weak, to hire around it to bolster them. So for example, we have one CEO in our company who is not the most process and operations oriented person, right? Which is fine. He's brilliant product guy. He's great at hiring. He has excellent set of skills that are very important for being a CEO. But we know what the weakness is, and so bringing someone strong on that can complement his skill set is part of it. And then just working with him or in general, all of our CEOs, to mentor them to becoming more CEOs than they are founders is just a process that takes time. And it's not just us that we work with. We encourage them to get advisors and actually find CEO mentors that can help with, right? Because we're their investors, right? We're not CEOs. We haven't been. One of the partners, Pietro, was a CEO before. So he works quite a bit with the portfolio on a lot of the tough CEO type decisions like hiring and firing, which, for a lot of our founders, it's the first time they've had to do it. But also encourage them to find active CEOs who can act as mentors to help them develop in their own right. No, but that's great, Sitar. And I think to summarize, we're saying great leaders is the most important thing maybe, but also that you grow into a great leader when you build a great business successfully. I think I wanted to move us on here because I think one of the most common topics that I come across when I meet entrepreneurs here in Stockholm is the topic of capital. Is there capital? Is there scarcity of capital? Can you help me get capital? How do I get capital? What's the cost of capital? Do I have to give away equity to get the capital, etc.? So how many of you have raised external capital at any point in time? Keep them up, keep them up. This is also a workout experience. Okay. How many of you have raised that capital from an institutional investor? Hold the other hand up if that's true. I want kind of two-handed people now. Okay, so a pretty good group. Take them down. How many have raised capital from an institutional investor in the last 12 months? So maybe 8, 10, you say? How many has raised more than 5 million euros? 1, 2, 3. Oddly more. Okay, so Venn diagrams, guys. Now we go to basics. No, but that's great. So I think the topic that I come across is there a funding gap? And starting maybe at the very bottom here, Pär-Jörgen, is there a funding gap, or is there actually plenty of capital available in the market?
Well, it's a complicated question because I think for the very top entrepreneurs, there is definitely not a funding gap. It's extremely competitive to get that kind of deal, because I will be really trying to get into such a great company and competing against Harry, and sometimes teaming up with Harry or with Ben or with Axel or someone else who actually are actively developing this market as well. So the top tier is extremely, I think, very large access to capital. I would say the second tier of companies, and that sort of becomes a bit complicated, because those second tier are either actually second tier or just first tier that hasn't qualified yet to become first tier, and that's the problem, because I would say that there's a problem to access capital for that group that really hasn't proven themselves that they are first tier. We spent a lot of time trying to establish which ones are those hidden gems. And in the meantime, we know that we do make some entrepreneurs quite disappointed because we sort of think that they could be this gem, but after a while we sort of conclude that no, it's not. And that's why the processes sometimes can take a long time. And then obviously the resulting effect of that is that there is capital shortage. In the very, very early stage, I think it's been a dramatic improvement in the market. That was not the case just 5-10 years ago. It was virtually impossible to get the seed financing done. So that's part of the value chain that I think has been corrected, partly at least.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And to lead on to that with Sitar and Pawel, maybe Pawel first. I mean, you're really going after that seed early stage market that used to be an empty hole. How's the experience? Is there a lot of good companies out there? Or are you seeing valuations come up as a consequence of going after this? Or what's the story in your end of the market?
So I think there is many gaps in Europe, like depending on where you look. In general, it's just like comparing with the US, it's like totally different order of magnitude of money that's available or not available in Europe. And so what we have defined for ourselves as the kind of gap that we are addressing is this kind of a bit later than the earliest business angels and a bit earlier than the traditional VCs, let's put it that way. So those few €100,000 where it's too early to write a few million check and maybe too difficult to put together the round out of 50,000 angel checks, 50,000 euro checks. So that's what we are addressing, and because of the fact that we're addressing it, the valuations have not gone up incredibly yet.
No, but you can change that today. listen,
No,
don't take his word on this.
I think in terms of like competitiveness, as I said, in the US it's a totally different planet because there's just so much more money available, and in Europe it's different. And I think it's changing. I think it's good. It would even be good. Or it is good for us VCs if there is more money available, because more companies are funded before we come into play, and there is more follow-on funding available. Sure. So I think more money in Europe would be good for everyone involved, for entrepreneurs and for the VCs that are in there.
And Sitar, kind of on the same topic, do you feel as an institutional investor in this early stage that by the fact that you offer an alternative to going to maybe 50 angels and cobbling together something with a lot of people in your share owner list, is that a competitive advantage per se, or is the stark reality that whatever money comes in through the door first is being taken?
I think it depends a lot on the entrepreneur and how careful they are about their fundraising and what they want to do with it. I think the reality is, while it has gotten a lot better, like Pär-Jörgen said, it's still an area which could definitely do with more capital. The seed funding area, I mean, we do 6 to 8 deals a year, and we could double that without an issue, and I don't think there'd be a change in valuations.
Got it.
So there's a gap, and I think so for some of the entrepreneurs, it's just, yes, they would prefer someone who can help them out. But in the end, they would, really prefer money. They would just really like money, if not money plus value add. And that's just the sort of stark reality. Whereas I think what would be nice is if it got to a position in Europe where really you had to compete based on value add, even at the seed level.
I think what makes it more complicated.
Got a way to go for that, I think.
What complicates things in Europe on top of that is that it's like so diverse geographically. So, Stockholm might have a couple of VCs, but they will not look in a part of Europe that might have a lot of entrepreneurs, but no VCs, No.
But actually on that, and let me move us on a little bit. Ben, I mean, one of the challenges when you're part of a really, really successful fund group is, of course, your assets under management become significant. At the same time, I think your roots are in actually taking that bet that Pär-Jörgen described, where it's hopefully a tier 1 company, but the big return comes from picking them before they've broken through and are valued like a Spotify or a Klarna or what have you. How do you manage that, and how do you not only do Supercell investments?
Well, I mean, it's interesting you raised Supercell. I'll come back to that. So I think you're right. We 2 years ago made a very proactive decision. We'd always been occasionally doing seed deals when something looked interesting, and that at a rate of a year. But two years ago, we made a commitment to much more proactively do seed deals. And I think that was the main thesis behind it was that there were catapults out there which early stage businesses could strap themselves to, and if they aimed themselves in the right direction and kind of put the right amount of tension on the elastic, they could go a long way with seed money. And those obvious catapults are things like Facebook. You can leverage that social graph, things like iOS platforms. So I think we saw, not for every company, but we certainly saw for a lot of companies, there is this trajectory where they go and they do seed, and then the next time you see it is when you're paying hundreds of millions. And I think we said we've got to be active at seed. And I think, there's two reasons. We want to be active at seed because we think we can make great investments and make money at that stage, but we know we need to be active at seed or else we won't be relevant at the later stage rounds. And I think, more cynically for us, it's kind of giving ourselves 2 bites at the cherry. So if we make the wrong decision at seed stage, as we did with something like Supercell, we just get out this new pitch book we have about how we whip ourselves and prostrate ourselves again in front of the entrepreneur, say how much we've learnt from them, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And a few months later, and then you go in and you have to pay whatever 600 million, 700 million valuation, but at least you're in. And in the case of Supercell, if we hadn't had a relationship built up through knowing the individuals through the seed and venture process, albeit we made the wrong decisions at those stage, we wouldn't have been in the running at all to do the growth deal. So we don't see it as two. I mean, for us, they're kind of two pillars of the same stool, and very kind of synergistic, those activities.
No, okay, and I think that's very good. And talking about Supercell, I mean, it's fantastic to get in at any stage, and I think you got in paying 4 times 1 quarter's free cash flow. So that puts a lot of pressure on you or early stage companies here in the room to be realistic with your valuations if you want to compete with that opportunity. Another thing that we talk about a lot in Europe is that we don't have the guts to lose big. And if you don't want to lose big, you can't really win big. And Harry, you're also with a very large fund organization. And still, I don't see you write $20, $30 million checks in business plan type of stages, but we do see this regularly in the US. And I know some of you entrepreneurs believe the fact that you're not as successful as Twitter or Facebook is because you didn't get the $20 million check, you got a $2 million check. And I'm sure your moms agree with you on that. Harry, what's the reality here?
Well, I mean, look, it's a market, and if you have to write enormous checks to get into the really great companies, then that's a market reality, and I think that is a reality in the Valley. I mean, we actually, unfortunately, did have an opportunity to get into Twitter very early, which we missed, which a couple of people lacerate themselves about every day. Not me. Luckily, I wasn't in the company, but I
clearly
probably
Harry
would have made the same. I would have made the same
pitch.
mistake, I'm sure. I would have gone, "What's this?" But anyway, and everybody has those stories to tell. No, it is a market. I think I mean, we believe obviously that the people that invest money in us, the LPs, the big endowments and universities that give money to us, they want to invest in venture because they want to see great returns, and typically great returns mean 3x plus in the fund, and that means that you've got to invest at a reasonably fair valuation at the start, or you've got to know that you're going to get breakout velocity and the company's going to be an enormous win like a Twitter. Now, as a partnership, we've taken the decision that we want to focus on the early stage, and that hasn't always been true in our history, and we've learned along the way. But we believe that now we're in a world where you basically have 2 serious opportunities to invest in a company and to hopefully to be helpful. One is at a kind of Series A stage when the product is pretty much there, but there's a whole lot of acceleration and company building still to do.
Tick tail style.
Yeah, I mean, Ticktail's on the early side of that, but yes, exactly. And then there's later stage, which, if the company is showing great promise, valuations can fly way past 100 million, and to be honest, that puts it out of our ballpark. So if anything, the reason we're not making writing $30 million checks is because we don't feel well qualified to play in that game. We feel reasonably well qualified to identify talent reasonably early in the process and to help in that company building process. But I think we're less well qualified when it's a case of metrics and more sort of private equity type deals.
But I mean, what I'm hearing here, I think, is pretty positive. A willingness to deploy capital pretty much up the range, maybe not all the way to private equity level. So that's really nice, I think, for the room to hear. It's also a bit of psychological trickery, because I've got them to talk about money just to tee us up for 4 companies presenting. So, where are the 4 companies and what are the rules? Maria, help me out here. Yes. They're going to present for 2 minutes. That's tough. 2 minutes. So no engineers presenting today. and then the panel is going to vote. Maria?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Pitch competition final. 2-minute pitch. Everybody hold up 2 fingers. This is so hard to do. 2-minute pitches. Comments from the panel? Short comments. And after the 4 pitches, you all get to vote. And then at dinner, the winner will be announced. And oddly, only then will the investors swarm like flies. Before then, they were not at all interested when you tried to talk to them. Okay,
Cynic.
let's get it started.
But can I be notified when it's 1 minute? So I
Yeah.
know where I'm standing? All right, thank you. So Open Ratio is a category leader in enterprise mobility. We are for mobile what Episerver is for the web. Right now we see enterprises, they want to move their processes into mobile. Agencies, they want to upsell their clientele with a mobile offering. Different verticals and different markets, they want to upsell their clientele into mobile offering. But we have a problem. Each one of them have different needs, different requirements, and they don't have the know-how internally to how to scale, how to build. Even sometimes they don't have the budget to do it. Here what Open Ratio comes along. Hannes can help me out a bit. We don't really care what your kind of infrastructure or content or back-end do you have. We just have a cloud platform. We put it on top of your infrastructure. Then we publish native application on different mobile, on iOS, Windows, mobile web, etc. So what we do, we're really proud to cut costs by 80% for all our partners, and we promise you to move your mobile development and publishing in-house. Now, let me talk a bit about Open Ratio. It's a company that's 1.5 years old. It has 2 founders. Now we're 14, completely client-funded. We made in sales last year over $800,000. We have a presence in 7 countries. We have clients such as Bonnier Group, Unilever, Fuji. We have a waiting list of 1,500 companies in 84 countries. And let's talk of why am I here today. We need help. We need smart money. We need a partner. We built the technology. We built a business model that works and generating income. We have a AAA team that we're really proud of, but we need a partner to help us grow the company and explode it internationally. Thank you.
Well done. Okay, so who of the smart panelists wants to take this one?
Well, we actually invested in Episerver, and I know Mikael Runheim sitting here in the audience. Yeah, he's there. So if Michael Runheim likes you guys, we will invest.
We met last year. I remember we were in alpha release, and you gave me a contact in Episerver to integrate it. I still remember it.
Michael, stand up. Come on. Come on. So hold out your hand like this. Hold out a thumb and choose direction. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Short but sweet.
Okay, next company.
All right, I'm actually an engineer. My name is Anders. I'm CEO and co-founder of OptiString. OptiString is about solar energy. And as you know, the panel manufacturers are having really hard times. And that is what OptiString really is about, solving their suffering. Now inverters are needed in the systems to convert DC from the panels into AC for the power grid. The panels, they have become commodity. And what adds value and differentiation is the electronics in the systems. We do a smarter, lower cost, patent-pending, module-level inverter technology that's ideal for integration onto solar panels. We can increase the energy harvest with up to 25%, and we improve the safety in the system. What makes us unique is 99% efficiency and below half the cost of our competitors. Now getting back to the customers and their problems. The panel manufacturers need to add value and differentiate their panels. And they need to make them safety compliant. Buying and integrating our inverters solves all of this. And at the same time, they get higher margins. We have good traction with top 10 players and are in serious discussions on joint development deals. About 20% of the market, or 50 million panels in 2016, need boxes like this from us to a value of 2 billion euros. So we're seeking 2.5 million, and that will take us to black numbers in 2015. So join us in driving the smart inverter segment and in helping the panel guys to sell their stuff and to actually make money doing that. Thank you.
Well, so great pitch. It's challenging the panel. I mean, you have a marketing consumer goods background. I will not pick you. Pawel, you want to go for this?
The only thing I know about solar is that it's very dependent on different kinds of subsidies.
Yeah, that's right.
And without subsidies, I think the industry would not work right now. It's changing. And are you contributing to that? That it's changing, or like?
Yeah, absolutely. We're lowering the system cost and the inverter cost, and it's right. It's driven a lot of with subsidies, but the subsidies is shifting around. So Germany is cutting back, and then for example, US is growing, Japan is growing. So by going to the major panel manufacturers, we're getting the whole global market in one place.
And Harry, actually.
No, it's just sorry. Hello. The big Chinese, you know, the Yinglis and the GCLs who have been eating everyone's lunch here. I know you mentioned patent pending, but you know they're all moving into inverters and they're doing it at incredibly low cost. How do you avoid being eaten by them?
It's actually them we're talking to. We want to sell to them.
Right.
And they don't really have any electronics background, so we're hoping that we can keep the value on our side.
Be careful.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
"3D models are everywhere. Designers use them to plan renovations. The characters, objects, and rooms in computer games are all 3D models. And for 3D printing, you need the model in the computer first to be able to print anything out. But today, making those 3D models is really hard. Either you need to employ a team of experts working in building models from scratch in 3D modeling programs, or you can buy a 3D printer, or 3D scanner, sorry, which is costs between $10,000 and $40,000. And even then, you need to spend a lot of time fixing the models afterwards, and you need a powerful PC to make the computations work. So Volumental is here to change that. We bring 3D scanning to everyone through our cloud service. So all you need is a camera like this, or a Kinect camera, which costs about $80, and your browser. And what you do is you film around an object or a person, like this, and then you get a 3D model into your browser within minutes. And it's this ease of use and the lack that you don't need any specialized hardware that's the most appreciated by our customers and our users who've already created over 1,000 models on our online service. We make money through licensing and revenue sharing, and we've just raised 2 million in soft funding, 2 million crowns, that is, in soft funding from Vinnova. So as I've mentioned, 3D scanning is useful in so many areas. Our first paying customer is in health, and we're talking to customers who want to bring our scanning solutions to their end customers in retail, art, and virtual reality. Think how cool it would be to win against Zlatan in a football game with a team of your friends, rather than a standard set of impersonal characters. Or maybe having a 3D statue in bronze printed out for your garden in life size.
Why are you looking at me?
Yeah, him or yourself, anyone. So I'm Caroline at Volumental, and we bring 3D scanning to everyone through the cloud. I welcome you to join us in this 3D future. Thank you.
Well, this is obviously deadly cool, and what you should know in the panel is we have one good student here who really wrote a proper email beforehand saying what he wanted to talk about, and it happened to be 3D printing. So Ben, you own this.
Okay, thank you.
Wow.
Well, fantastic. Very good presentation, I have to say, and I do think 3D is a big area, both printing and scanning.
It's a big area.
And I think that you've got the right approach to the market, which is thinking about a low-cost, standards-based solution rather than some very high-tech proprietary rig. I think that an interesting comment I would make here is an analogy I would make is one of the most successful kind of consumer hardware companies the last few years is GoPro cameras, and I think what that I'm not sure, they probably had less IP in the camera than you frankly have in your setup, but what they did fantastically well was manage to get their users to promote the cameras with amazing videos of people doing crazy skiing tricks and people going underwater and so on. Do you think with your product you'll be able to create that enormous kind of consumer advocacy and fantastic consumer content which really drives people to buy your products?
I think so. So right now you can 3D scan around people and all this type of stuff and get 3D models in your browser, which you can share with your friends, embed in web pages, and soon also 3D print directly from our site. And I think that's the kind of thing that people will say, oh, check out this cool action figure of myself, or post it to Facebook, all this stuff. So I do think that can happen, definitely. And if you want to help, we can 3D scan you and you can post it to your Facebook page.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the final company.
My name is Jan-Erik Collin, and I'm representing Chudzinski Medicals. Do you know that today and every other day of the year, 45 Swedish men are getting the shocking information you have prostate cancer? These guys will be called in to the hospital in the next coming days for radical treatment. Radical treatment means surgical removal of the prostate gland, radiation therapy, and in some cases also chemical castration. The reason for this drastic therapy method, is that there are no reliable and diagnostic and prognostic tool that can really judge if the tumor is aggressive and lethal or non-aggressive and doesn't need any real treatment. The negative side effects from this therapy is also that the patient will come out with lifelong urine leakage, impotence, and thereto belonging psychological traumas. Chudzinski Medicals has invented, developed, and now planning for a commercial launch in the autumn of a totally new test system that can call Prototype, that can distinguish between the aggressive tumors and the non-aggressive ones. The test results will give thousands of men and their families possibility to live there through with high quality of life, and also will save a lot of money for the healthcare systems in the countries this test will be introduced in. And that's the message I have to this audience.
Well, thank you so much. That was a grim message. Pär-Jörgen is just turning 50.
Yeah.
I mean, we can all see where this is going to go. So, Sitar, I want you to comment on this because it's less emotional for you. I want you to comment on the business, but also if you have any ideas how it would be possible to present this without everybody breaking down in like emotional despair for the future.
Actually, I think using people's emotions is actually a very good thing. I think the way you presented it was good. You should probably even go further and say that you probably know someone who's had prostate cancer and has been hurt by it. And I think that works really well. I think emotional pitches and storytelling are actually a great way of getting people interested in your company.
The fact is that here in Sweden right now there are 75,000 men living with prostate cancer. So many of you, I can imagine, in the audience here know one or perhaps another one or have some relatives that have been caused by this illness, because it is the most common cancer form by men. More than 30% of the men cancer is prostate cancer.
Yeah. I have to say, and since most tech events are so heavily male, you have a great audience, right? They're all your customers or potential users. So,
thank you so much. Let's just hope the 3D model can't get it as well. Doubling of the market size. So now we're going to vote. So it works like this. You have to understand internet. If you do, you know this is dub, dub, dub. And then you follow that. Put that in. And then choose. And we probably have to give this a little bit of time because I tried it in the panel before and it does take a minute or two. But seem to work well. Maria, do you have some system where you can see if people are done voting?
And it's 767987.
Okay. And then we have, what, 10 minutes left?
Not so good.
So, yeah. Good.
Is
everybody ready?
No.
But this is good. You can vote in the system, but you can also vote with your money. And then you come to me afterwards. I take the money, and then I pass it on, or at least a portion of it on. Yeah, that is business as usual.
And a few warrants.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, so. I mean, I'm very glad we had business people, we had engineers, we had somebody from the medical industry all pitching and pitching well. I'm very impressed with the 2-minute effort. And every time you come to Silicon Valley, they're like, "Oh, you guys in Europe don't know how to do an elevator pitch." I've never heard an American shut up. What's they on? I mean, it's exactly the opposite. So now we're gonna go into the heavy topics. And the heavy topics is to talk about what you actually want to invest in now. I mean, now we're giving away the secrets that will help you know that you're great business leaders, and you just have to change the strategy to fit that. And today it's very quick to update your business plan, and you go from one thing to the other. And so I'm thinking about the Nordics in particular, maybe even Stockholm in particular, and maybe starting with you here, Harry. I mean, if you were to deploy capital tonight or maybe tomorrow, if we're a bit slow on the deal making, in the region, what are kind of the spaces that get you most excited? Where do you see the comparative advantages?
Gosh, yes, good question. I mean, if I were to say advantages of Sweden, I mean, famously design and strong engineering talent. And so when it comes to design, I guess that lends itself to consumer internet products, things that you know, improve, whether it's improving e-commerce like Ticktail or improving, you know, how we work in a small business. It's all going to come down to very you know, great design. And I think particularly as we move into a more mobile world, you know, tools to help you run your business better, for example, on a mobile. Design becomes ever more important the smaller the canvas that you're working with. But I mean, that's a very broad set of set of businesses.
Yeah, but you don't have to be worried because Ben promised to not take notes.
No, I mean, I think ultimately, you know, the reason it's a hard question is that ultimately what we do is we invest in people. So, I mean, for example, Emil, sitting over there from Neo4j, I know nothing about databases, but I was very excited by his business because he's a very exciting entrepreneur, and we spent a lot of time a couple of years ago talking about graph databases, and he convinced me that this was, you know, going to change the world. Sadly, couldn't quite convince the entire partnership, but
No, but listen, it's great that Harry brings it up, and I recommend all of you here to try to corner Emil for 2 or 3 minutes tonight, because he really is the essence of how you want to be as an entrepreneur. I spent, I think, 3 days with that guy 4 years ago, and I came out thinking like graph databases was actually cool. And then I came home and slept for a week and realized that's total nonsense. But, you know, online fashion is kind of cool. I mean, you know. So, Ben, you've made a killing in this region. In fact, you should be giving back, not investing. Is it going to be more of the same? Do you see new areas? Is it all B2C, or are you thinking B2B?
Yeah, so I'd say yes, last year I think people were very interested in kind of what I'd characterize as gimmick-driven business models, and I know Kinnevik sent a ton of money down to Germany for those guys to invest in that category, and I'm pleased to say that seems to have died down, the interest in that, and I think people realize if you're running an e-commerce business model, it's got to be a utility, not something which just catches people and works for a while, but then the business model falls out of whack. So I think that's the area where we're dialing down, I'd say. And I'd say that an area where we're very actively dialing up is mobile-centric applications and services more generally, and potentially incorporating hardware. And I do think there's a few in the audience today, but I think the idea that you use the mobile as a sort of central compute platform with lots of sensors on it, but also you can potentially get additional sensors, whether it be GPS monitors, health monitors, security monitors, or interactive toys that work with the mobile phone. I think we're actively looking at a lot of things in that space, and I know there are a couple of companies in Sweden which are leveraging that trend.
That's very exciting. And Sitar, from your perspective, I mean, you haven't made an investment yet in Sweden, so you clearly want to change that.
Yes, I do. Actually, the best investment ever I made in my life was with Swedish entrepreneurs. So I'm a big fan of Swedish entrepreneurs, actually. They are based in Berlin, but still Swedish. So I mean, one of the reasons why we came up, other than being at this awesome event, is to really explore the ecosystem and kind of try to figure out what are the areas where this ecosystem is very strong. And what are their kind of skill sets and where can they be applied. So, for example, it is very strong in design, and one area that I've a keen interest in is education. So a company that could, you know, apply really clever design skills to an education platform would be really interesting. I think it's increasingly going to be important to get a direct-to-consumer way of educating people that bypasses a very slow to change school system. But one of the problems with a lot of the existing startups I've seen is they're just not that engaging for the end consumer, who's the student. So trying to see some innovation around that would be interesting. But I think what's interesting about Stockholm is there seems to be there's a broad set of skills around what Harry mentioned, which is design and engineering, which you can apply to really any area. So applying it to areas that are kind of very big and globally interesting is what I'm.
But I love the school theme. I mean, there is so much to innovate there. And an American recently said to me that it's fantastic with Minecraft here locally because they've taught a whole generation of kids to code computers. Mistakenly, I told my 9-year-old son that to play about 4 hours a day, and he said, "Great, then I don't have to go to school." So, Pär-Jörgen, you've invested in 2 fantastically successful businesses in Spotify and Avito. So these are both big, kind of massive consumer adoption, winner takes all type of plays, but also fundamentally different because in one case you have absolutely no control of the content owners, and in the other case the consumer is the content creator. You know, you've done both successfully. Is there a third path? Is there another play like that? Or is that game kind of done and valued up now?
Well, good question. I think there are a couple of markets that are very much ripe for disruption. And if you talk about the content market, I would say that the TV industry is certainly, or the video industry, and we've done let's say an indirect attack on that through Video Plaza, which basically is powering the shift from online, from offline to online, you would say, and it's clearly so that in a few years' time there won't be sole dominance by the cable operators in your living room as the only way to consume linear TV. And if you probably, some of you have kids, and you have probably also noticed that they don't watch TV anymore, and that's something that is it's not going back to TV consumption behavior, but the business model has really not changed.
No.
And the big problem is that the content owners are so fragmented and so incredibly ingrained and entrenched in the existing business model. So it will be, it'll be interesting to see who really disrupts that model. So another area that I believe a lot in is what Ben and I did together with iSettle. It's just one example of a big disruption, I think, to come in the entire financial industry. It's probably one of the most inefficient structures that there is in the world, and there are so much money being lost by just being shuffled back and forth, and basically the money that is deployed has we probably administrate more than 50% of the money that is actually needed. And I think with the new models, they are so much more efficient in finding the need and the provider of the capital and distributing risk between the capital owners and the ones who actually need the capital. So I think there will be a massive upheaval in the financial markets, and we are looking very actively into entrepreneurs that are addressing that opportunity. And actually Stockholm, given that Olof Stenhammar, he was actually one of the first in the world to disrupt that market with OMX. I think he set a great example. And also we have banks here that are actually pretty interested in testing new themes because they are very efficient from an international standpoint.
But this is clearly a huge trend, and Sweden has done a lot with iSettle, with Klarna, Pärson, and so on. Sadly, Jacob is not here. We would all have noticed because even when he sits down, he's like taller than those who stand up. But I tried Google Wallet today, and it was absolutely awesome. So now I'm dead scared. And TV, I mean, so how many in here have children? How many of you have a child that does not watch YouTube every day? Okay, so that's also concerning, isn't it? And Ben, coming back to what you said, it's very interesting with this. I think Apple drove it on to us, this actually melding of software and hardware into integrated and dedicated devices. And I think we all show a willingness to own and carry many more of these compute devices that we could ever have imagined 10 years ago. Is that also starting to shift us into cross sectors? I mean, will people who have kind of doing stuff on the medical side, will there be collaboration with people who work more on the internet side? Thinking about the Jawbone acquisition, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. I do think, you know, hardware is definitely, from having been a very sort of out of vogue sector where people are where investors were rightly fearful to invest the last few years. I think low-cost hardware is now quite important, and I think there are lots of interesting startups. We have one investment in a company called Sonos, which makes sort of Wi-Fi speakers for the home, which very much leverage the fact that you've got music services like Spotify, the fact that you've got low-cost control devices like iPhones, and I think that's doing fantastically well. But I think there's literally every vertical, everywhere where you've got a dedicated piece of hardware, that probably will get replaced by a standards-based piece of hardware, or a mobile device, and a low-cost sensor or output device.
Fantastic. And I want to do one thing before we get thrown off stage. Is I want to see if we have some questions from the audience to the brains. No, sorry, the wallets. No, sorry, no, the smart investors. No, I'm not sure anymore. Any questions?
Really?
Come on. It's ridiculous. You're entrepreneurs. You want to show how forceful and smart you are. Emil, you can kick everybody off. Ask a question. Just to lead the way.
Sure. You talked before about seed stage investments and institutions and stuff like that. Signaling. Talk to me about signaling. Why, if I'm an early stage entrepreneur raising seed, why would I go to one of the big institutions? Thereby, if I take seed money from them and they don't participate in the A round, they have a surplus of information versus everyone else, it's going to send a signal to all the other institutions that blah, 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 that whole thing. Talk to me about signaling.
Harry?
It depends if you think that going to one of those institutions is going to increase your chance of success generally, right? I mean, from Balderton's perspective, we don't make many seed investments a year. We're a small team. We're 7 investors. Sorry, I lied, 8 now. And we will only make a seed investment if we're pretty confident we are going to follow on. And so we only make a total of maybe 12 investments a year, of which maybe 4 will be seed, that kind of number. But there's no sort of particular ratio. But I think there can be a sort of virtuous cycle of having a big name investor on board. It can help you recruit top talent. It can help you, spread your, get more consumers. It can help you launch in another market and so forth. But I agree, it is also a risk if they don't follow on.
Very good question. Some pressure. I like that.
I would actually say that we are, when we do that, we are very transparent with the fact that if things really go sour, the signal effect could actually be quite negative, and then it could be over and out, because we are we are always, when we are investing, we are asking the existing investors if they if they are expected to have capacity to invest, we would expect them to want to invest also. If they don't, that's something weird. So
but I actually think the problem is not when it goes sour or when it does really well. The problem is in the middle. And I obviously have a very strong opinion about this because, well, it's my business. So I far prefer people come to seed investors. But I think I've looked at deals where people have had taken on seed investment from major VCs, and I just assume that there's something wrong with the business. And there's no way I'm going to know more than their existing investors. And if their existing investors are not willing to lead the next round, there's something wrong, and that's simply it. And it could be wrong, but I think it's rarely the case. And in almost every single one of those cases, the company has not gone on to raise money. And I don't know if it's true that there was something wrong with the company, but just that signal that the VC wasn't willing to lead the round is an issue. And they all say, well, we'll follow on, but if you have a billion under management, why wouldn't you lead a 1.5 million round, right? Your job is to deploy capital.
Ben, do you want to comment on that?
I mean, I think it's a very valid concern and one that's voiced at us quite often. And it actually, there was actually a survey last year, and they tried to dig in precisely to this question. And I think firstly, I think when you go into that discussion at seed stage with the VC, you've got to be completely honest with them, and they need to be completely honest with you about the parameters on which they will invest subsequently. But actually, the survey showed that you're much more likely to get follow-on financing if you do have a major name VC in the startup syndicate than if you don't. So I mean, that may be that on average they're higher quality, but I think the evidence suggests at seed stage, should I include a VC or not in my syndicate, the data suggests you're more likely to, not less likely to get follow-on funding if you have a later stage VC in the syndicate.
I mean, to round this off, I would also say, because we run a lot of data on that it's highly supportive of the benefit of taking capital from this group. I would also say, in addition, that if the market was perfectly efficient and with no memory, it would be very different, but it's not. And in fact, I think the people who get the best value out of institutional investors are actually those who get the money at seed stage, because they treat it with the same respect, same time as the largest investments in the fund. And I think in some ways you can say that's irrational behavior on your side, but I see it happen all the time, and I think that's a real good in the way our ecosystem works.
I actually not necessarily agree. I think big funds don't always treat their seed investments the way they treat their big investments, and most actually don't. I think it's rather an exception if they do. And that's why I think our smaller funds like ours kind of have some sort of attraction to entrepreneurs, right?
Well, to be honest, I think I and the entrepreneurs love you all equally as long as you invest in our companies, and you're all fantastic. But I think my point is, it's damn lot nicer to have an active investor on board of any size than 40 passive high net worth who forgot about you after 3 months and when you had the first hiccup there on the golf course. Martin.
Martin Hjelmvik, Sten Capital. Would you, except of Pär-Jörgen, who is located here, would you consider making a seed investment here without having a local partner? Yes.
I don't know. So we work pretty actively with the companies that we're invested in. And so it's something we're considering right now. I mean, we work a lot in London and Berlin, and we have an investment in Paris. So adding a third geography when we only have 3 partners, there's no one junior, there's just 3 partners in the company. We don't even have a secretary. So it does add actually quite a bit to the workload, but it is something we're considering because we're seeing really good entrepreneurs and companies come out of here.
Okay, last question.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think it depends on how we perceive, which we'll often get wrong, how we perceive the amount of company building to be done. And it's, if the company is down the road from you and you can drop in, once a week and, or indeed even in your office, as a couple of people are based at the moment, you can obviously give that much more company building. If it's an experienced entrepreneur doing a seed investment, when they built a company before, I suppose would be that much more comfortable. But we love finding local or partners or angel people who can, be more on the ground with us.
Just very quickly, I mean, we're not trying to build ownership stake at seed stage. It's more a question of getting involvement. So we like to have lots of people around the table, and I think we'd absolutely be happy to do a seed stage investment without a local investor. But to go back to a kind of signaling point, people like Pär-Jörgen, they will know the scene extremely well. So I think we'd almost be surprised, as it were, if there was if there were great interesting companies that we had somehow managed to see and the local community had not or didn't value. So
that's a valid point. Okay, so last question from the audience. Can I ask you first, are you an entrepreneur?
Well, I work for Business Sweden. I have a quick question.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, I'm interested actually what we see right now, the interrelation between what we see more and more crowdfunding and VC capital. What is the interrelation? Do you see that? Are you actually, it's peanut money, most of the time. Is it something that you're looking into? I mean, from what trends are in that perspective?
It's an interesting question. A lot of people talk about that. Anybody want to take that on? Yeah, Pawel?
Crowdfunding increases the number of businesses that get funded in the very early stage, so I think it's good for us. Right?
Yeah. I just view it as like validation that your product has potential customers or has kind of support in the market. I think it's generally fantastic. And I don't know many companies that have done crowdfunding and not gotten seed investment anyway. So, I mean, there's two different kinds of crowdfunding, right? There's crowdfunding that doesn't involve equity, and there's crowdfunding that involves equity. I think the crowdfunding that involves equity is also interesting. It's also a lot smaller than the crowdfunding that doesn't involve equity. So Kickstarter versus, in the US, you've got Circle Up. And in UK, you've got a couple of others, Cedars, etc.
Okay, so last question, and yes and no answers only, starting at the bottom end. Will 2012 be a good or a bad vintage?
What, 2012
13,
or 13?
I mean, come on. 13.
I think it will be a fantastic vintage.
Okay, Ben, will LPs go back into backing European VCs on a broader scale?
Yes, I think.
What year?
Well, actually, I think the returns are going to be pretty good the next couple of years. So I actually think in a year's time that big LP window will open up. I do think it's out of kilter for sure at the moment. So yes, I have to say yes.
Pawel, when will the IPO markets open in Europe for technology companies?
Where or when?
When?
Poor. Never.
Excellent. Sadly, but true.
Yeah.
Sitar, what's going to happen in the Asian landscape? Are there going to be more funds like you? Is this the beginning of the new kind of Ant Factory, Gorilla Park world?
Possibly. I do think it's hard doing a seed fund unless you're an experienced investor and you have a track record you can point to. But I think there's now a whole generation of VCs that have that do have experience with some of the larger funds and or just investing on their own, and they're getting ready to institutionalize that. So I think maybe not this year, but possibly next year you'll start seeing, hopefully, more seed funds and more kind of pan-European seed funds.
Harry, do you find it a real challenge that US fund managers travel here and beat you at your own game in your own backyard?
Sorry, I didn't quite follow the question. Sorry.
Do you find it a challenge that US VC funds fly to Europe and take the deals under your noses?
It's embarrassing, yes, when they do. But I think they usually only come in at the Series B stage, and that's another reason why we need to play at the Series A.
Excellent. So I'm just going to wrap up here shortly, but then remember that these guys and lady are going to be around all evening, so please corner them. That's the purpose of being here, not eating or talking to friends. So I think what we've heard today is actually that there is plenty of capital in the whole value chain from seed up. And you just need to be smart and aggressive enough to go after it. For instance, showcasing that by asking questions at events like this. And when it comes to technology trends, I'm hearing a great interest in mobile. I'm hearing a great interest in integrated software and hardware solutions. Still a lot of B2C to happen, but maybe increasingly also B2B software plays. And I would say two things that maybe surprised me a little bit. One is a willingness from the whole group to actually dig down and really do early stage investments. And also a willingness to get on an airplane and come and do it here. So I think that's fantastic. And I think with that, a big hand for this super panel.
So, thanks a lot, Per, and thanks a lot for the panel. And we will also, all of us, contribute to entrepreneurship in Africa. Thank you. Thank you. So, please. And thank you, Per, for a very good moderating session here. Thanks a lot. And you can also contribute to entrepreneurship in West Africa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely.
So now we've got to learn good companies, good investors. We've got a lot of good advice during the day. And we're going to continue to build great companies here in Stockholm. Now I will dress up for dinner. Hold on. You have to wait. There will be a reception or some dinner, drinks before out here. We will have dinner in here, in this room. So you're going to go out and have a drink out there. Then we'll change this scene here. Then during the dinner, we will have an award ceremony and the winner of the pitch session, Javor. So that will take approximately 45 minutes before we're ready here. So during that time, you can talk to the investors and grab their money. And I will go and dress up. So see you a little bit later.